Yeah, you mentioned the situation within the administration, but outside the administration, he's attacking Rand Paul as well, which was one of the few Republicans defending him during the Russia gate. And right now he feels somehow threatened by what Rand Paul is talking about. Is that a serious issue with Donald Trump? Do you think, how do you see that? How do you see these people who, somehow attacking Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, the people who doesn't agree on some issues with him, not totally, but he doesn't, he doesn't, uh, he's not patient in his way of treating them, of dealing with them.
Welcome to the cult of personality, because that's what we have. We don't have a functioning democracy. We don't have an institution that respects diverse opinions and respects the process of debate, dialogue, and discussion that normally is supposed to take place as complicated policies are put together. This is how you get a bipartisan consensus on things so that as policy go forward, you have support on both sides of the aisle. This is a winner-take-all approach by a man who views himself as a literal king. He doesn't view himself as the president of the United States. He views himself as the dictator of the United States. And it's a cult of personality. It's literally what Donald wants, Donald gets. I mean, when was the last time you saw an American president gather all people around, put their hands out as if he is the conduit to God, praying to God through him? In America, where state religion is verboten, and yet he's posturing himself as if he is the conduit to God for so many. This is dangerous. I mean, this is really, really dangerous. It's dysfunctional in terms of actual democracy. It's dysfunctional in terms of how this constitutional republic is designed to work. It's three separate but equal branches of government. And yet what Donald Trump is doing is bullying both the judiciary and the legislative branch into falling in line. He said if people go against him, he's going to ruin them. He's talking about Republican senators. I mean, this is very, very dangerous times that we live in, because we are governed by a man who appears not to recognize constitutional limits and appears to be prepared to put all the power that does in fact accrue to him to use it in any way he sees fit. The Constitution be damned.
Yeah. One of the alarming issues during the meeting that Putin had with his cabinet, the Russian defense minister said that deployment plans for the Dark Eagle hypersonic missile system in Europe and in the Asia Pacific, capable of reaching central Russia just in 6 to 7 minutes. I don't know if there is some sort of communication between Russia and the United States, some back channels, Pete Hegseth somehow some sort of communication between Pete Hegseth and his counterpart in Russia. Is there anything of that sort? Because we've learned that Peskov has mentioned that there is no phone call planned between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. But how is the communication between the two administrations? These sort of meetings in Russia shows that there is no, if there is, it's not that much efficient. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, when you have back channel communications, the implication is that the president implicitly trusts the person doing the back channel communications to accurately reflect the position of the United States and accurately report information back from Russia. It's a non-standard way of doing business. It's been done forever. I mean, JFK famously had several back channels into Khrushchev that helped bring the Cuban Missile Crisis to a close. Even during the Biden administration, when Joe Biden wasn't interfacing with Vladimir Putin at all, there were back channels taking place. The CIA, was definitely involved in a back channel between Narishkin and who was the CIA director under Biden, Burns, maybe William Burns. But could the CIA, the CIA has muscle memory in that regard. So could Radcliffe be a back channel? If he is, nobody's talking about it, which sometimes is good. But the problem is the you can have the channel. It's like AI, you can have AI, but if all you do is feed it garbage, the AI is going to spew garbage. I mean, this is the way it is. What's going into this back channel? Who's advising the president, and how is the information coming back being given to the president? I mean, obviously, this would be a back channel outside of the normal Director of National Intelligence, bailiwick, and so it's not being factored into the.
Yeah. It seems something has happened with Scott's
There we go.
connection. Yeah,
I think we're.
you're back. You're back. Go ahead.
Yep. The FBI hasn't jammed me fully this time, but we'll give them a minute. The point is, what filter is there? The Russians, I mean, Donald Trump said something the other day that raised my eyebrows. He said, we are in negotiations with the Russians about arms control. But every Russian I've talked to says there's nothing going on, nothing. I mean, so is there a back channel where it's being whispered? But then who backstops them? The arms control network here in the United States is gone, finished, dissolved. There is no dedicated Bureau of Arms Control. It's been melded. Arms control responsibilities have been melded into State Department bureaus now that also do counter narcotics and counter terrorism. So there's no dedicated group. And 1,300 State Department professionals were fired on July 11th of this year. These were the people that did arms control, the Russian specialists and others. They're gone. So who's doing the work? And this is the danger. And it's something I've been saying all along. The danger is if you don't have a team of people that can contact their counterparts in Russia, the vacuum of information that's created, creates the opportunity for the Russians. Now they have to speculate. Instead of knowing what the United States is doing, they have to speculate. And when you start speculating, you have to think worst case scenarios. And so you have to prepare for worst case scenarios. And that's the policy direction you go, which should be the last policy direction anybody in the United States wants Russia to go. The Trump administration is paying the price for this narcissistic egomaniac who, wants to run the presidency as a cult of personality instead of this chief executive of an executive branch of government that has a bureaucracy and an infrastructure and a methodology in place for making policy and overseeing policy, implementation of policy. That's out the window right now. This is literally the definition of chaos.
Scott, my understanding of what's going on between the United States and Russia when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine, whenever someone talks about the situation with Ukraine, or somehow Donald Trump's every time he comes out, he says something new, or he repeats the same sort of rhetoric. But we cannot learn from the United States what's going on between the United States and Russia. But when Russia comes out this way and Putin says this is a serious issue, it means something, I think, for us. They're not going to panic easily. When they say something, they mean it. That's problematic, in my opinion. That shows how fragile is the communication between the two countries.
Yeah. First of all, there's no panic in Russia. I mean, there's no panic at all. They're just doing businesses, as they see fit. Russians take treaties very seriously, and the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty is a foundational, treaty document for arms control. And it's a very serious thing if one side is talking.
Yeah. We've lost you, Scott. Can you hear me? Yeah, you're back.
Yeah,
I'm
back.
Yeah.
It's a serious thing if one side is talking in a way that could be interpreted as walking away from the treaty. So, of course, the Russians are taking this very seriously. But, the Russians have made a comment recently coming from the Kremlin that I think all Americans should pay heed to. I think it was Dmitry Peskov who made the comment that, in the past, it was that the Russians were trying to get a meeting with Trump or looking forward for a meeting with Trump, and thought that the meeting itself could be a pathway towards getting something done. But now what they're saying is there's no need for a meeting with Trump, because there's no reason to have a meeting if the United States isn't able to put anything on the table. Uh, and so the script has been flipped. It used to be Russia that had to put something on the table. Russia was the one saying that we're waiting for the Russian proposal and things of that nature. Now the Russians are saying, you got our proposal. It ain't changing. And unless you're willing to put something on the table that moves our proposal forward, there's no reason to talk. And so that has changed too. So when we talk about the United States, Russia, and Ukraine, understand this: Russia is on an irreversible path when it comes to Ukraine. There will be no stopping. There won't be no backing up. They will continue down this path until they achieve the outcome that they desire. And that outcome has been explained in great detail, not only to Ukraine, but to the United States and indirectly to Europe. There are no surprises here. Everybody knows what Russia expects to happen before you can talk about, cessation of hostilities, a ceasefire, etc. And I think what we're seeing is that the Trump administration understands this reality, and they also understand that they can't vocalize a policy that embraces this Russian outcome. So they're washing their hands of Ukraine and putting the burden on Europe. And that is the American position on Ukraine right now. So, there are no surprises here. This war, unfortunately, is going to finish the old-fashioned way. And that is, the Russians are going to kill every Ukrainian out there until the Ukrainians stop fighting. There will be no negotiated settlement. There will be an unconditional surrender. When that happens, I don't know. Russians aren't putting a timeline on it, but the idea that there could, that this war can stop and there will be a negotiated peace, that's out. Russia is committed to winning this war. They've always been committed, but they were in the past willing to have diplomacy interject itself and fast forward, some of the processes through negotiation. But now it appears that Ukraine is incapable of doing that, and Europe and the United States are unwilling to do that. And so Russia will force the issue on the battlefield. All you pro-Ukrainian yahoots out there, you can read whatever you want. Prokofiev is falling. Ukrainians are dying. Kupiansk is going to fall. And then we could just go on and on and on. The war is going to end in Russia's favor. And the only thing that's going to change, besides the territorial losses, is the tally of dead. And far more Ukrainians are going to die than Russians. That's the harshest reality there is.
I don't know if Donald Trump knows what's going on in Pokrovsk, Scott. Do you think the information he's receiving is still from Ukrainian intelligence, from British intelligence, or they have something to do with their integral system in Ukraine to receive what's going on in Ukraine?
Well, what's interesting is the Russians, something else came out of the Russian meeting yesterday, is that the Russians apparently were providing Trump with a daily briefing on what the front line really was. They said, we were giving Trump the actual front line so he could compare and contrast it with the lies that he was getting from Ukraine. And now they've said, we've stopped doing that. We don't care anymore, because it doesn't matter. The United States is not up to reality. There was a time when the United States was told to stop collecting on Ukrainian order of battle, meaning to stop following the front line. And because the data we were collecting, our analysts were assessing, gave us
yeah, we cannot hear you, Scott. Yeah,
gave us a result that was different from what the Ukrainians were selling us. And so we were told that we accept the Ukrainian version of events, and that's what would be briefed and such. We're fully capable of knowing the truth. We have intelligence capabilities that can ascertain the truth. We're also fully capable of cooking the books. There was a famous intelligence analyst in Vietnam, Adams, I think his last name was, Sam Adams, and he talked about just how the CIA and the Pentagon cooked the books on on enemy casualties, wildly exaggerating the enemy casualties so as to make it look like the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong couldn't sustain this fight, when the truth was, known to people like Adams and others who were doing the assessments. We can lie all the time. We're very capable of lying, but the lies that we tell are actually based upon the truth. For instance, I can guarantee you that the CIA knew that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They knew because I knew and I told them, and but they were told to cook the books. And so they did. And I can guarantee you there are intelligence analysts in the United States who know the truth about what's going on between Russia and Ukraine, but they're not allowed to tell the truth. They have to cook the books. Junior analysts have access to raw data and they assess that data. But then when they prepare reports, they send it up to mid-level management who's been instructed by senior management that there are certain, angles and caveats, et cetera, that have to come into play. And middle management starts massaging the data, sending it back for a rewrite or a relook, or just rejecting the report, putting it down as a footnote. And so it gets massaged till it gets to the top. And then, the job of the senior guys is to make the consumer happy, make the president happy. The president wants to believe that the Ukrainians are winning. So here we provide you a brief, Mr. President, the Ukrainians are winning. And the president, oh, good, they're winning. So we now can do this, that, and the other thing. Unfortunately, that's where we are in the intelligence business today. We get back to Tulsi Gabbard. It's her job to stop that nonsense, but she's been pushed to the side. John Radcliffe, unfortunately, has been demonstrated to be an absolute liar and manipulator of intelligence. I'll give you a brief example. If you go back to the issue of Russiagate 2016, Radcliffe knew that Tulsi Gabbard was getting ready to release a report. And so he preempted a report with his own 5-page quick summary of the processes involved in creating the 2016 intelligence community analysis that was then released in 2017, and its unclassified version became very controversial. And he lied, straight out lied about the processes, who was involved, the timetables, et cetera. And, then you see Tulsi, publishes her report. And I think it took Radcliffe by surprise because she declassified things that, as somebody who used to be in the business, shouldn't have been declassified. I mean, it gave away an awful lot. But by declassifying it, she eliminated any chance for people like Radcliffe and others to politically whitewash the event. But it showed everything about his memorandum was a bald-faced lie. Why did he do this? Because the person responsible for the intelligence community assessment was the same person briefing President Trump